I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's analysis of the news. The book of Revelation, chapter 16 says, "And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared." Well, here it is. New York Times says Iraq suffers as the Euphrates River dwindles. I read, "Throughout the marshes, the reed gatherers standing on land they once floated over cry out to visitors in a passing boat. 'There is no water,' they shout. The Euphrates is drying up, strangled by the water policies of Iraq's neighbors, Turkey and Syria, a 2-year drought, and years of misuse by Iraq and its farmers. The river is significantly smaller than it was just a few years ago. Some officials worry that it could soon be half of what it is now. The shrinking of the Euphrates, a river so crucial to the birth of civilization," listen to this from the New York Times, "that the book of Revelation prophesied it's drying up as a sign of the end times, has decimated farms along its banks, has left fishermen impoverished, and has depleted riverside towns as farmers flee to the cities looking for work. The poor suffer more acutely, but all strata of society are feeling the effects. Sheiks, diplomats, and even members of the parliament who retreat to their farms after weeks in Baghdad. Along the river, rice and wheat fields have turned into baked dirt. Canals have dwindled to shallow streams, and fishing boats sit on dry land. Pumps meant to feed water treatment plants dangle pointlessly over brown puddles. The old men say it's the worst they remember," said Saeed Daia, 34 years old, a fisherman in Hindaya, sitting in a riverside cafe full of his idle colleagues. Quote, "I'm depending on God's blessings," end of quote. The drought is widespread in Iraq, the article says. The area sown with wheat and barley in the rain-fed north is down roughly 95% from the usual, and the date palm and citrus orchards of the east are parched. For 2 years, rainfall has been far below normal. Sounds like Elijah is already around, doesn't it? Leaving the reservoirs dry. And American officials predict that wheat and barley output will be little over half of what it was 2 years ago. It is a crisis that threatens the roots of Iraq's identity, not only as the land between the two rivers, but as a nation that was once the largest exporter of dates in the world, and that once supplied German beer with barley, that takes patriotic pride in its expensive Anbar rice. Now, Iraq is importing more and more grain. Farmers along the Euphrates say, with anger and despair, that they may have to abandon the Anbar rice for cheaper varieties. Droughts are not rare in Iraq, though officials say they have been more frequent in recent years. But drought is only part of what is choking the Euphrates and its larger, healthier twin, the Tigris. The most frequently cited culprits are the Turkish and Syrian governments. Iraq has plenty of water, but it's a downstream country. There are at least 7 dams on the Euphrates in Turkey and Syria, according to Iraqi water officials. And with no treaties or agreements, the Iraqi government is reduced to begging its neighbors for water. At a conference in Baghdad, where participants drank bottled water from Saudi Arabia, a country with a fraction of Iraq's fresh water, officials spoke of disaster. Quote, "We have a real thirst in Iraq," said Ali Baban. That sounds a lot like Alibaba, doesn't it? But with an N on it. Ali Baban, the Minister of Planning, "Our agriculture is going to die. Our cities are going to wilt. And no state can keep quiet in such a situation." I guess maybe Ali Baba should say, "Open sesame," huh? Anyway, recently the Water Ministry announced that Turkey had doubled the water flow into the Euphrates, salvaging the planting phase of the rice seasons in some areas. That move increased water flow to about 60% of its average, just enough to cover half of the irrigation requirements for the summer rice season.